Thank you, Sarah. Happy Friday, everyone. It's the 5th of November on Friday. Happy Friday. Thank you for coming to our CBOT teleconference meeting today. And before we do that, though, as always, we are going to take a roll call, and make sure we have a quorum. So Secretary Marcos, do you mind doing that for us?
Richard Bookwater.
Here.
Lena Dom.
Here.
Denise Miller.
Here.
Jeff Farrow.
Here.
Sharon Pavlovich.
Here.
And Beata Marcos here. Everyone is present.
We have a quorum. Thank you, Secretary Marcos. Okay, just again, happy Friday. Glad to be here, finishing up our Friday day with some of the agenda items. But before we start, just want to say happy Diwali. If anybody practices or celebrates that to you, thinking of you, you're in our thoughts. And just looking forward to having our meeting today. And as always, very grateful for board staff, legal, and everybody that's here, just supporting the board in the efforts of moving forward. So thank you for that. I'd like to open it up to any of my colleagues on the board to see if they have anything to share. Richard?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just fussing with my video because I wasn't showing up because I realized I had my camera covered.
Okay. Any other board member comments? No, and as a reminder, if you want to choose, I forget to say that, but please put your video on. It kind of gives us just a heads up that anybody wants to comment. So I see nobody. Moderator, could we open it up to see if there's any public comment for items not on the agenda?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen and type comment or I wish to make a comment and send to all panelists. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Yeah, and if you'd like to just say hi and introduce yourself, that's okay too.
This is the moderator. I have a comment from Sierra Cox saying, hi, just letting you know that we have 36 students from Samuel Merritt University at the first CBOT meeting. I'm not sure if Sierra also wants to verbally comment or not.
Yes, Sierra, do you want to introduce yourself and your mates from Samuel Merritt? How exciting to have students from the board here. Welcome, everybody. I don't know if you wanted to say a little shout out, introduce yourself. Are you open to that? Or are you just kind of like the Q&A function? Either one's okay. Sure, awesome.
All right, Sierra, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone. If you could click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, you are unmuted.
Thanks for having us. I'm Kara Cox. It does look like Sierra. And I'm here with Kate Hayner, my colleague, and 36 of the finest future OTs. So this is our advanced leadership class, and we're going to be here till 11. So thanks for having us.
I love that, Kara. Thank you so much for being here. For Samuel Merritt, a little shout out to you. Advocacy and leadership is one of my favorite things. I think it is for all of the board members, or we wouldn't be on the board. So a big shout out for you guys showing up on Friday, even if it was a class requirement, or maybe not. Maybe all 36 of you decided to show up. Either way, we're happy to have you. And just so you know, and usually in this section, we have an agenda item that's listed on the board website. bot.gov.california or .california.gov. Oh, I always do it backwards. And there are materials and agenda items there for your access. And this, sometimes people want to just posit an idea or something for the board to consider, is why we open it up for public comment. So in the future, if you ever have anything you'd like to share and for the board to consider, that you know there's always this spot there. So again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments, moderator?
This is the moderator, and it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Okay, thank you so much. We left off at agenda item number 19, the executive officer's report. And with that, Heather Martin, do you want us, our executive officers, Heather Martin, do you want to take us through the your report?
Let me see here. Not sure how to do this. So, okay. So what I wanted to start out with is the written report that does give an update on the vacancies, including the fact that we got approval to hire both a replacement probation monitor as well as a retired annuitant to assist with the transition plan with Jeff's retirement coming up. It's now been pushed out to February 1st. So we will fill both of those positions this month. I'm hoping like in the next week or two, possibly. We're still negotiating start dates. And then unfortunately, last meeting, I reported that we had advertised and interviewed for another enforcement position. Unfortunately, after the interview process, it was determined we needed a larger candidate pool. And so that position has been re-advertised, and we will begin work on scoring those and scheduling interviews for that. Listed below that is a couple of other upcoming recruitment packages. And if there aren't any questions about the vacancies, then I will get right into the money issue. So listed in that first report, it does tell the documents that are provided.
Can I ask a vacancy question, Heather?
Yeah.
How about board vacancies? We have one OT vacancy on the board, and I'm just wondering if there's any information about that.
There is not. I followed up on both that vacancy as well as Jeff's reappointment, and I don't have any information to report on either of those.
Thank you.
So after that first divider sheet, I think I mentioned yesterday, we just got fiscal month 2 information. For those who don't know, the fiscal year does run July 1 to June 30. So the information here is from July 1st through August 31st. And what you have showing is the actual line item, and then both what the current month revenue collected was. And since it's for 2 months, you can see to the right where it does say year to date. I think going forward, we will remove that balance since the budget column does show 0, or if the board prefers, we can put in what we have estimated those revenue line item amounts have been. I guess that would tell you kind of like how close are we in our estimates. But if that does not matter, then we can simply remove that budget column as well as the balance column. So I'll take any, feedback on that. No thoughts. Okay. So anyways, so by line item, you can identify the source of revenue and the amount collected. And if you go to the back of that page, because as of right now, it's, it's just, we're 2 months in, and you could see that we've collected $499,000 through August 31st. Any questions about that?
Heather, just for your comment, was a suggestion just to make it easier to remove the line item, or I'm okay with the way it is, but do you think it would be something that'll streamline it or make it easier?
Well, no, I just I don't want to cause any confusion or so that's the only reason I suggested, that we could take that out.
Okay.
So the next item, let's see, just one second. Janine, can you go to page 4 or 5, I mean? Just one moment, please. Page 7, please, Janine. So the next item shows the first 2 months of the fiscal year, again, July 1 to August 31, showing the expenditures. Again, it shows it by line item. This document does show in the budget column the figures that are actually in the governor's budget. It shows the current month, which again would have been August, and then year to date, that's the July and August. And if you flip down to page 3, you can see that the expenditures for the first 2 months are $504,000. So with our discussion yesterday about the fact that the board is not revenue neutral, meaning that the incoming revenue equals the expenditures, then the money comes out of the fund. So 2 months in, you could see the expenditures already exceed the revenue by about $5,000. It's probably a little bit more than that, only because the Office of Attorney General line item, that one does come, there's a lag time on that. So in response to the board's request yesterday, what we will do is using these line items that are in the governor's budget, we will at the next meeting show what the budget is, what the prior year expenditures were, and what we project those expenditures would be for the next 2 years. If this visual of this document helps give information or provides a visual to go with what was discussed yesterday. Are there any questions?
Thank you for that, Heather. That'd be nice, especially noting the conversation we had yesterday. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions about that? If not, I'll keep moving on. So again, for illustrative purposes, on page 10 of the materials, we have the month 13 report. And this fiscal month 13 revenue report is for the fiscal year 2021. So that means July 1st of 2020 through June 30 of 2021. This is a report that shows the revenue for the year. I'm excluding the reimbursements on page 3. If you just go straight to the bottom of page 2, that shows that last fiscal year, the board spent right under 2.5 million. I'm sorry, earned right under 2.5 million. And then moving down 3 more pages, we have the fiscal month 13 expenditure report. And again, this shows the expenditures through the end of the fiscal year at 2.623 million. So again, we're a little over $200,000 per year less in revenue compared to the expenditures. So that's where the information in the fund condition, which I believe might be on page 4. Let me just go back. Page 3. So the fund condition again is a document, and for the students, all of the fees that show in the revenue categories are the fees that licensees pay, whether it's a delinquent renewal or page 3, Janine, please.
Heather, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the renewal fees, for the OTAs and OTs, I'm just wondering,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Just curious, I was trying to remember what the numbers were at our last meeting, but have you noticed I thought there might be a difference because of COVID of people either restoring their license to active or going inactive, but it seems to be still consistent. And am I understanding the numbers correctly from our last meeting?
So, so what I will say, this is very interesting that when we were doing, so every year we have a document that's called a workload and revenue statistics, and we have to prepare this, and we use these revenue categories, and so we take a look at how many of each of these, they call them widgets, you know, how many renewals, how many delinquent renewals, you know, how many dishonored checks, et cetera. So we look at what we've had for the past 2 years, and every year we do this and make the projections for the next 2 years. Every year we do it. So we obviously fine tune one when we realize our projections weren't, you know, close. So what was interesting when we were preparing that document is that there was about 20, depending on the category and the year, 24 to 28% fewer licensees renew in the January to June period. And that came up because part of the things we were talking about is that the renewal fees increased in January of 2021, right? So what that meant was last fiscal year was half the renewals at the old fee and half the renewals at the new fee. So what was surprising to us in comparing those is this 26% drop from the number renewing in the second half of the fiscal year to the first half. So we actually thought it was an anomaly because it was a January to June odd year renewal. And when we went back and looked at the prior fiscal year, it was the same exact thing. I think it was 28% fewer renewed in the January to June period. So, I mean, having been with the board for so long and never really looking at the half a year comparison, except for this case we did for revenue purposes, we were unaware that such a few number of people renewed in the second half, which has contributed to us overestimating what we thought our projections would be based on the renewal fee increase. They seem to be slightly going up, although there was last year, there was like a flatness, if you will, in the number of applicants for a new license. And that, yes, I would attribute to COVID. I would not attribute any renewal differences to the COVID though.
Okay. And I think probably to students finishing way past fieldwork deadlines because, you know, it was hard to find fieldwork spots and everyone was extended. So I think that just looked at the numbers reflecting here differently too. So that's really interesting. Okay. Just curious about that. Thank you, Heather.
Yes. So if we go to page 3, there's a fund condition there. There we go. Thank you. And so here again, here's the document that we looked at yesterday for the, you know, just I hope you don't mind a quick recap for the students. But so for the fiscal years 2019-20 and 2021, again, this first page is revenue and it shows actual revenue earned. So you can see the comparison there. Then we have 21-22 is our current fiscal year. That is a projection, as well as the ongoing years. Those are all projected revenue increases. And when we do that, we project an increase for the budget year +1. We just simply copy that for the next two because we really truly have no idea what we're going to be, earning a couple of years from now. Once we get part way into this year, then we'll have a better idea. And on the following, so you may note the 2.4 and in revenue earned last fiscal year, and we've estimated we're going to earn 2.8 this year. And on the next page, which is the expenditures, on this document, you can see that last year we spent 2.8, even though we spent or earned 2.4, and we project to spend 3.2 when we're going to earn 2.8. So that is including, though, that 3.2 million total expenditures and expenditure adjustments is based on the 350,000 identified at the top for projected savings. So because the revenue is, the expenditures exceed the revenue is not enough to be neutral with the expenditures. That gets the difference taken out of the fund balance, which is towards the bottom. And of course, that affects the months of operating reserves. And so that's showing that the board has a downward trend in money available to remain fiscally solvent. Any questions, or do you want to open it for public comment in case the students have questions?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. Moderator, could we open it up for public comment just to see at this point if any members have any questions? And there's no such thing as a dumb question. We're learning. I think you guys are here. Take advantage. Ask some questions. Our executive officer, Heather Martin, is really has been with us for a long time, and we'd love to help any learning possible. So if you have questions, please chime in. Anybody?
This is the moderator. I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
I do see a comment in the comment box, correct, moderator?
Yes. Let me go ahead and request to unmute the microphone.
Hi, it's Kira again. Could you explain to the students maybe that the numbers are in thousands? So when it says $37, it really means $37,000, and the
Yes, thank you. That is an excellent point. So, so for the students, again, because rather than having all the zeros that would follow the numbers that are in the millions or hundreds of thousands, the numbers shown are in thousands. So for example, if it says 2.297, that's 2,297,000. Likewise in expenditures, if it says or it says 2801, it's really 2,801,000. So thank you for that. I try to do these in an explanatory way and sometimes forget that part.
thanks a million.
And I think that's important because if you look at, I know when I first looked at the numbers, I'm like thousands, and it didn't make sense to me. And then I heard Heather talking in the millions. I'm like, oh, it makes it's different tone when you're dealing with higher volume of money. So that's a great question. Thank you, Kara. Any other questions?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
Okay, so then moving on, we have the applications data information. Now this one, because we aren't limited, the revenue is a little bit limited because of the Fiscal reporting system, but this is what we typically do, which is provide information for the quarter. So this is called quarter one of the fiscal year. And so what you can see by different application type, you can see the number of applications received in a given month and the number of applications approved. And we go so far to the end, we tally them on the far right under total received for the quarter and total approved. Again, the reason there's a difference is if sometimes an application, let's say it's received on the 2nd and it's approved on the 28th, that's in the same month, but sometimes it's received on the 2nd, it might not be approved into the following month. Likewise, if it comes in on the 29th or 30th, it might not be approved for a couple of months or even the following month. So generally speaking, the number received and the number approved, those won't match. And then down below that, you have the number of renewals processed for both the OT and OTA categories.
And Heather, since we do have the students, do you mind just explaining a little bit more about the availability of the limited permits? Because we always have a low volume of people taking advantage of those, and I think it might be good for them to know.
Yes, yes, that's a great point. So there's a provision in the laws and regs that says that basically there's a presumption that a new graduate is prepared, right? That's why you're getting ready to take your boards. And so what there is because it takes a bit of time for once you submit your application to NBCOT to get back your authorization to test letter, as well as schedule your exam. And of course, we have to have the score from the passing score from the exam before we can issue the license. So the limited permit, though, is a great way for someone to enter practice. So let's say your level 2 field work, you like the place, they like you, and you recognize that by the time you apply for your NBCOT exam and submit your application to the board, which again, hopefully you've got the message already. And if you haven't, please know you can do this simultaneously. You do not have to wait to submit the application for licensure after the exam. But the limited permit, what that will do is if you don't have your transcripts yet, and or if you have not yet taken the exam, then the limited permit is a way for you to be authorized to practice pending you scheduling the exam and like taking it and getting your score report. And so the limited permit, which should be about 4 or 5 down, what you can see down here, I mean, how few people did this? 32. So, 45 people basically in the first quarter applied for the limited permit, and far more people graduated than that. And so what folks do is by applying for your initial license, you actually miss out on the opportunity that you could be working, following your graduation. And what I tell people is, so number one, the $50 application fee, whether you pay it under your initial license or under the limited permit, if you do decide to pay for the limited permit, that $50 application fee carries over. So you don't have to pay that application fee again. So that's one plus. So for that $100 fee for the limited permit, you get to work, which means you can work whether it's a week or whether it's a couple of months, you're able to work, which means that once you've taken past the exam, when you have to pay your initial license fee, you will have already been working. So you're not that out of pocket, like you're out of your new salary. So the limited permit is a great way for new grads to enter practice sooner than getting the initial license.
Oh, thank you, Heather.
Questions about that?
Yeah. Any, do you want me to open it up for questions, Heather, just in case, since you had the topic? Or do you want to wait to the end?
Yep, that's fine too.
Okay. We'll wait till Heather finishes report, everyone, and then we'll open it up for public comment. Thanks, Heather.
So if the board had no questions on that information, then I will just continue because that's the only one for licensing. And so following that, we have the CBOC cases and complaints data on page 22. Here we go. So again, we have the information for the quarter. We did add the word cases. It used to always say complaints, and I can tell you that whether it's an inquiry to a licensee or even a reference to it, complaints has always been the way we capture this information, and it's very scary to people. So what we've done is we're trying to make the shift over to cases. So what you have here, you can see the number of complaints open. Total, was 107, and that's a combination of 73 actual complaints, but then 34 conviction or arrests. So for the students, when you are an applicant, the background check is ran, and we only get information about background history. But once you're licensed, if you are in fact arrested for something, the board is notified of that. And so these 34 arrests received for the first quarter of the fiscal year, they're counted as a complaint, again, for, just data capturing. And then so what you can see is the board received 107 complaints. They closed 125. We still have 300 complaints pending. Some of those haven't been investigated yet. Some are in the process of the investigation. Going a bit further, if you could scroll just a little bit. So accusations filed shows 4, and the accusation is the legal pleading outlining violations the board is alleging against a licensee. It's a legal document that precedes a hearing or a settlement about the licensee's violation. And right below that, if you can scroll up just a little bit, or maybe you can, sorry, let's see. Going down, you could see that we still have 14 cases at the pending at the Attorney General. And then in the category of final decisions effective, that means for the cases where violations were alleged against a licensee, then the board reviews that, and the board renders a decision on what the outcome of that case will be. Did the board have any questions about that? Okay, if not, moving on to the next page. What we have is the number of citations that were issued to occupational therapy assistants. And when the board, when a complaint is opened against a licensee, sometimes it's more egregious in nature and ends up in a legal pleading, and other times it doesn't. It ends up in a citation, which is considered administrative in nature, kind of like a speeding ticket. And so what we are showing here is that at least at this point, there had been no citations issued for continuing education or PDU violations, but generally that's a much higher number. And so there weren't very many issued here. So continuing on, if there are no questions, I don't see any hands or board members on camera. So go to the next page, and this has the OT citations issued for the same quarter. And there were 28 citations issued. The numbers at the bottom of the next page, oh, that looks kind of funny. The categories aren't displaying properly, but if you go to the next page, you can see the totals at the bottom. And here, although it's not displaying properly under the violation, that first column is a failure to cooperate citation. The third one over, where there's another one that was for unlicensed practice, meaning someone either practiced prior to licensure or they practiced after the license expired. And then you have only one issue for 1 for a PDU violation, 25 for an address change. The numbers don't match because sometimes people are cited for more than one violation. If there aren't any questions about that, I don't see any hands.
We'll open it at the end. I just wanted to, since you're here, Heather, and we're doing learning moments for the students, I know this kind of time frame doesn't really show it, but the biggest violations that come before the board or that we see numbers are PDUs, correct, Heather? People.
Second address change violations, but it's more than 3 times higher than the other ones. Excluding address changes, it definitely is the number 1 violation.
So just be mindful, everybody. It's not a matter of if, it's when you're audited, right? When you become a licensed practitioner, at some point you'll be audited and I'll ask you to show all your PDUs and certificates. And so when you're unable to do that, that puts your license in jeopardy. And then this shows up in numbers here. So just want to, don't do it. Always do your amount of PDUs that you have, keep a record of them and start organizing. So you don't show up as a statistic in this number here. So I see Board Member Miller would you like to chime in, Denise?
Well, just because we're talking about learning moments and we have the opportunity, I would just like to share that what you've just stated there, President Pavlovich, also ties into when we as a board have to look at a fee increase every time we have to address an item as simple as an address change, put staff resources towards it, there's a cost to that, and that cost affects your fees. So if you don't want your fees to go up, bottom line, you don't want your fees to go up, you really want to pay attention to what you can do as a licensee to make sure to keep these costs down. It's really a shared partnership between you as a licensee and us as a board. And we hope that you see that the board your license is here to protect you, and you're here to do a great job for our consumer in the state of California. So those are I just wanted to connect those dots on that, because I think we're going to have to, I think as other board members stated yesterday, we're going to have to do an uptick in our outreach to members about the connection between these types of reports and what potentially could be a fee increase.
100%. Thank you so much, Board Member Miller. And also, just to finish connecting those dots, the board exists because our primary function is consumer protection. So when you're not licensed, when you don't show that you are complying with the PDUs required of you every year, that is a consumer protection issue, right? Because you're not doing what's expected according to our laws and regs. So lots of little learning moments. Hope that's okay with y'all. So thank you, Board Member Miller. And I'll turn it back over to Executive Officer, and we'll open up the floor for any questions once she finishes her report. Heather?
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Heather.
Okay, so the following document on page 26, this is the one that explains the status of the 14 cases that are pending with the Office of the Attorney General. And so for the students, I mean, this is public information. So once it's finalized. So right now we don't show the information. We show it just simply as this, by complaint number. But once the board does once these items come before the board, for example, the third row down, probation, 3 years. So that means the board voted on that. So what that also means is when somebody looks up the name, if you go to verify the license of, a prospective employer or a colleague, this information is attached to the licensing record. So this information until their final, this is just a way where we track the information and let the board know, where the cases are at that are at the Attorney General's office, which is, in the top 5 in terms of expenditures. So is that good? Does anyone have any questions?
The board looks good, and I think, well, I keep telling them we'll open it up as soon as you're done, Heather, so maybe we'll have some at that point too.
Okay, that sounds good. Then I will continue. The next page, this shows the final decisions, and to the point I made just a moment ago about how the information is public. The reason this document shows what the names are is because once the board has rendered a decision and it's final, it's public information. information, and all of these licensees that are shown here, if you looked up their name, you would see the legal documents. The first one that alleged the violation, and then the second one, which was the board's decision about what that would be. And again, for somebody who's on probation, that whose license is revoked, any of these categories, that stays on the record indefinitely. So even if someone has, you know, a rough spot this year, let's say, you know, 5 years from now, though, that will still follow, and that's something to be, you know, to be aware of when, you know, considering your practice. Denise, did you have a question?
Heather, just because we have the opportunity and because so many of those violations are renewal audits, could you just take a moment to say what that is?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
so the where it says failed to comply with the citation order and remediate PDUs. So here's the process, and thank you for Denise. That's what's a good point is, this is unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. From a regulatory standpoint, this is completely avoidable. So when a licensee renews, they do not turn in their PDUs. They simply self-certify, yes, I did the 24. Well, what we do is we run reports monthly that randomly looks at a month and the number of people who renewed, and then randomly 10-12% of those people are selected for an audit. So an audit letter is sent requesting provide us proof. So for example, this is November of 21. So let's say somebody was renewing in, you know, May. So we say, licensee, please provide the information showing you met the 24 PDUs in May. And then they ignore the first letter. So the second time we send a certified letter. Sometimes they accept it, sometimes they don't. And if they don't respond, then it goes to enforcement. So then enforcement opens it up and they issue a citation. Dear licensee, you failed to respond to the audit letters on these dates. And 1, you're hit with a fine for failing to respond. And 2, there is an order of abatement that says you must provide proof of the 24 PDUs. When they don't do that, if it's just a fine and there's no order of abatement, then that will come up at the time of renewal. But for citations that include an order of abatement, whether it's you must do 4 more or you must do 24 more, if they fail to respond to that, then it's transmitted to the Office of the Attorney General. So this process takes about 2 years of a licensee non-responding. And in this case, looking at the top one, there was a proposed decision after that. The next one, the individual said, okay, I'm going to surrender my license instead of, you know, deal with this. But a little bit further down, you can see not only did this person, well, Vinicom, it's public, right? But there's a default decision revocation. And what that means is when the legal document came saying, dear licensee, you failed to respond to that audit to show that you met the PDUs, and the board is alleging this unprofessional conduct, that person continued to not respond, which then results in a default revocation, which means they basically ignored the board for about, or was non-responsive for about 4 years. Whereas the one below it, Laura Jordan, was a stipulated settlement, which meant that even though she ignored the audit letters and she ignored the citation saying you must do this, by the time we got to where a legal pleading was filed, what she did is said, okay, I'm going to agree that I violated and I will agree to be on probation so that the board can monitor my performance. And so you can see there's a number of different outcomes resulting in either probation or revocation, but the fact remains this all started 2.5, 3 years after they simply ignored an audit letter. So I think that's an important piece. Richard?
Yeah, I just have a question. When I look at this, I'm thinking about, we've been having discussions over the last couple of meetings about potentially adding requirements to the PDUs that, and not just you would have to have the criteria, you would have to have 24 PDUs in a 2-year period. That's the currently to renew, you have to have 24 PDUs in a 2-year period. And then a couple of things that are in our future agenda, and it's not a secret, so I think I can bring it up here without discussing it further, is that we might be making a requirement that some of those PDUs have a certain topic, be applied to a certain topic. Ethics or inclusion and diversity are the two that we were talking about, perhaps adding and putting on a future agenda. So could these PDU violations be somebody could, under that circumstance, a person could have their 24 PDUs, but if not, if there was a requirement that a certain number of them be in these certain topics, we could have PDU violations, a different
Further
kind of PDU
use.
violation where they had enough
Right.
PDUs quantity wise, but they didn't have the right, there wasn't one, or there wasn't the right type. Could that also, would those people also appear in this situation?
That could happen. I mean, if it's a regulatory requirement that a certain number be in a particular area, whether it's ethics, or in this case, like a lot of people do 24 PDUs, and generally speaking, they are practice related, so it's not an issue. Except that when somebody uses a number of different things, like I authored a chapter, I presented at a conference, I supervised a student, and so there's another requirement, though, that 12 of the 24 PDUs must be directly related to practice. And so it does sometimes come up where people do a lot of other alternative things, and not that it's not helpful or beneficial or that they shouldn't receive credit from it, except they just kind of skip that part about 12 related to practice. And so to your point, yes, that could be potentially a further violation should the board go that route of specifying specific content areas for renewal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
if there
Richard.
aren't-
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions, after that, again, to the point that everything is public information. Once people are on probation, there's a list of probationers, which is on the next page. And then even when they fall off of this list that's available on the board's website, that still the probation information does remain attached to their record. And so again, it's public information, the individual's name and license number, how much the length of period of probation. Over on the far right, you'll notice that some of them do have an asterisk after the date. And you might wonder, well, this is, March, for example, March of 18, it was effective for 3 years. It's after March. Well, what that asterisk means, it means that they were not practicing for a period of time when they were on probation. And so that's called probation is told. And so basically means for whatever period they didn't practice, it's tacked onto the end. And you can see we have one that was, started back in 14 and one that even started in 16. But because the individual was placed on probation in June of 16 for 3 years and hasn't practiced, the board basically retains that monitoring, right? Because the whole purpose of probation is for the board to monitor the licensee to ensure that their practice is good and that they're following the laws and regs. And one of the things, the reason tolling was introduced was so that if I was unhappy about my license being on probation, then I just go do something else for 3 years and then my probation period would be over and I could pop back into practice. And so the board wanted to avoid that, saying the reason we placed you on probation was to monitor your practice, to have somebody supervise you and report back to the board about that. And so you can't just like stay out of practice to avoid that. And so hence this notion of tolling was added to, again, make sure that however long it took, whether it was a 3-year period or a 5-year period, that the board, if they said 3 years, then that means they want to monitor the individual, not for a 3-year period, but monitor the individual's practice for 3 years. And sometimes, maybe there's a 6-month gap in the middle because I'm on maternity leave or what have you. There's a number of reasons, but if the individual doesn't practice for 3 years, and practice by this board has been defined as 40 hours or more a month, which is, a fairly low threshold. But if the individual does not practice for 3 years, then for whatever period they're not working, that is tacked on to the end. So if there aren't any questions about that, we'll get to item 19C. And in the materials are a listing of agenda items. Obviously, this was, sent out earlier.
Heather, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, because I'm being mindful that they're going to be gone in 10 minutes. Can I just open up the floor before we go to the, just to see if the students have any questions before they go? And while the moderator gets you guys open to see if you have any questions, Heather presented a wealth of knowledge. Just a couple things. Just to reiterate, once you are, noticed by the board and you see all those files, it's never expunged, right? So if something happened to your license, it'll always show. It might show the time frame if it was completed or not, but your name will always be tagged with something that happened there, right? That's public record, it's on there. And lastly, just a little C, this is your leadership and advocacy class. The board is always looking for people to be on subcommittees. We have a requirement that we're actually looked in some of the minutes to change from 5 to 3 years of practice. And once you have like 3 years under your belt, then we're going to see if that goes through. We need help. We need people to belong to practice committees. Fieldwork education committees, OTD committees, practice committees, and we're always looking for really good individuals to help out the board in some way, shape, or form. And I think that would be a great way to hone your leadership and advocacy skills. So when you get out there and you're practicing and you're interested in being part of board functioning and helping out, please reach out to our executive officer and let them know you're interested, and then we'll follow through with the vetting process. So with that, moderator, is it open? Just have any questions you have? I know we're going to be mindful of your time. You have 9 minutes left. So is there anything that you guys want to ask from the information that our executive officer just presented?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up that Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Kara, I see your comment. Oh, I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have a, no worries. I have a mention from Kiara. I'll go ahead and request to unmute microphone again if she wishes to speak.
Yeah, I want to encourage the students to ask questions, but I also want to take the time to thank you so much for really educating us all and, really acknowledging the students are here and really, changing your format and increasing your time by taking time for us. So I really appreciate that and all the work you do. Thank you.
We're so welcome on behalf of the board and everybody here. We're just excited that you guys showed up. That's like half the battle. We have a reciprocity kind of relationship. We're glad that you are here. You're the future, right, of occupational therapy practice. And don't underestimate the stewardship of what you can do for the profession. So you can always reach out to any of us. Our executive officer is Heather Martin. We're here on the board to help assist and answer any questions that you have. So we are so thankful that you showed up today, and tell your faculty they're awesome for just having you partake in today. We're really, really happy and mindful that, you have to leave soon, but again, wanted to express our sincere gratitude for you guys coming in today. Were there any other questions? And you're most welcome all the way across. Any other questions, moderator, that you know?
I have another one from Sam Campanelli. I'll go ahead and request to unmute microphone if he wishes, or if they wish to speak verbally.
Okay.
So
Professor Kiara Cox basically said, thank you for basically elaborating on what y'all are doing and what you're representing. It's a lot of information, and we'll take it and digest it, and we'll probably talk about it in our class later. But thank you.
Sam, thank you so much. You're welcome. It is a lot of information, right? It's overwhelming. That's only an hour. Right? So it is, and that's a good thing. It just kind of digests, moving on, like the stewardship of having a license and saying they're a skilled practitioner means something. The gravity of licensure means something. So know that not everybody has the privilege to attain a license in their work, and you will have one when you pass board. So digest it, work through your faculty, know that we're here for a board to answer any of your questions, or come speak, okay? Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that.
all right. Doesn't appear there are any further requests for comment. Do you want me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator. And Samuel Merritt's in the house. Woohoo! Will be noted in the minutes. Thank you guys so much for showing up today. And with that, I'll bring it back to our executive officer to continue on with items on the agenda.
So let's see here. So, under the listing of future agenda items, one thing is that we'll be able to remove the bullet number 5 about update the manual to reflect the revised committee member appointment criteria. That was approved yesterday, so we'll be able to remove that. The following one about identifying, criteria for the public member, that will be coming to a future board meeting. So in addition to the items listed, we also have a new item from yesterday about me reaching out to Dan Logston at the Council of State Governments to please report to us when they hit the 10-state threshold for the compact. We also have the public comment also requesting earning PDUs for a capstone, which is sort of suggests that that now makes 3 items to look at for earning PDUs. The one other thing that came out of yesterday was to schedule a meeting with the California OT and OT, or I believe OT and OTA programs to go over the occupational therapy assistant workforce needs assessment. I do think that would be helpful information for the OT programs to have as well. I can limit it to just the OTA programs, but after, I'll wait for the board to give direction on that. But I did think there was value to inviting them and letting them see this as well. And then lastly, one of the things that we should have had on here and that we missed is from a prior meeting when the board was considering the legislation from other states that were considering when they introduced legislation to establish the compact. Because it was part of their Practice Act, there was a suggestion that the board take a look at some of these other states' Practice Acts and compare them to the CBOT Practice Act. And so that is actually an item I have handwritten on here. So because the list is long, I would just ask that, once this very busy schedule of all the reports that are typically due in the fall, as well as the big lift, which is the sunset report, I would just ask that by next year we'll be getting back onto a quarterly meeting schedule. And so if possible, if the board could discuss and maybe prioritize what would be the most important for them to see on the February meeting agenda. And then also, if possible, maybe even the May. But we have this as a placeholder parking lot, but in order to ensure that the board staff and board president too, I guess, are putting the things on the agenda insofar as if some of these could be identified as, yes, please put these on the February agenda, that would be helpful.
Heather, do you want us to do all months or just look at the top, like 4 for February, maybe? Or
I defer to you guys. I don't know. That's my ask, and I don't even know if that is a priority to the board. So I will let you all discuss that.
Well, I think it's important. I think that we have it on here. Agendas. We might as well do something with it, is my guess. But just really quickly, Heather, what are the months we're meeting again? Maybe we might be able to knock them out into quarters.
February, May.
February, May.
August. And I don't know, I think I can't remember if the last one's in November, December, but I would just, maybe not knowing what will come up between now and then.
Okay.
I'm not sure that you really need to prioritize things, for next year, at the end of next year yet, because this list is fluid, and as things fall off and other things pop up, those things will be changing.
Okay. Do you guys want to just fill February's for right now, and then we take it every time, or do you want to just go across? I know it's a fluid motion, so things are going to be coming up. Do you want to just look at February and help itemize the information there for the board staff? Richard?
Well, I mean, I would just think I would like to identify a few that I think are more important than just to deal with sooner rather than later.
Okay, which one?
And give you and Heather, as a president and the executive officer, the the leeway to see how it goes, because obviously things come up. So you have to, and also the legislation, there may be some legislation in February
Okay.
that we have to look at that may have to come to the top of the list, you know. So, or that, for example, there's one of the points here has to do with the OTAC bill, OTAC, the public comment about OTAC and credentialing. Well, if there's a credentialing bill, you know, that would probably move up the list, you know, in 2022, just because there's pending legislation. Whereas if there's nothing next year, it could go later in the year. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I mean, I'll just identify. I mean, I think the first bullet is also could be. Did you say the first one could be eliminated as well? The per diem policy, we did that.
Yeah, I thought we did that one, Heather. We can knock that one out, right? The first bullet? Yes, okay. So
Yes.
if we knock that out, you're saying discussion of public comment, alleging OTAC is pushing to credential all school-based
Well,
OTs and PTs?
That's only, I mean, that would be more important if there's legislation this year, if
Okay.
it's being introduced, but if it would be less, it would not need to be on the February meeting. If it isn't, you know,
Okay,
because the board might be asked to take a position on that bill if there is a bill, but if there's no bill. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a issue with it. But the two that I find, the ones that I consider most important, I'll just throw that out there, are bullet 1, 2, 3, the 9 and 10, the PDU about cultural diversity, and the ethics course, because the ethics course, we have to talk about PDUs because the ethics course is a carryover from our last sunset report, and I feel we need to address that. So we might as well address all the PDU issues together.
okay.
And then I think some of the older things that we have talked about for a long time and haven't addressed are the ACO guidelines, education and training requirements for licensees under the practice committee.
Okay.
And then the retention requirements, the records retention requirements has been on our to-do list forever, and it would be good to address that.
Are those all under the practice committee, Richard? Or which?
Those three are, yeah.
Can you repeat the ones on the practice committee again? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. The third, fourth, and fifth bullets.
Got it. Under the practice committee.
Yeah, and those are just, I'm just throwing those out as ones that stand out to me as ones that we might want to think about sooner. And but I'm totally open to others' priorities.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Denise? And Helen, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I do see on this list that the DCA attorney is to review and provide an explanation of SB 731. Is there a specific question that the board has? It doesn't look like this bill is doing very well and may not survive to the next meeting, but also it appears to be mainly about, it's in the penal code, and it deals mainly with removing records from criminal websites. Did the board have something in particular they were looking for so that I can prepare an analysis?
And you guys chime in if I remember correctly, but someone please chime in if I'm incorrect. I know I forget that bill number, Helen, that passed, saying that people don't have to show convictions of, it was going to be expunged, their records, so that they can apply to programs that they weren't able to apply for before, like occupational therapy. That law passed last year, guys, this year. It was implemented this year. And I think this one, we wanted to know a little bit more about the expungement. Like, are all records completely gone? Or can no one ever look them up? And I know it wasn't a form that we could do. We can't even take that into consideration for a board licensee if they're applying anymore. So if that's kind of what I remember. Does anybody remember anything differently regarding SB 731? Because if not, then I don't want to make more work for Helen. Maybe we could just, and you said, Helen, it's not looking very good right now anyway?
It looks like it failed in, where is it, in committee? And then the most recent action was there was a request to reconsider. It refused passage on 9/10 and also on 9/10. Assemblymember Ting asked to reconsider this. So not that it can't still pass, but it's just it's not looking very healthy.
Okay.
But
Okay.
also, so that does help me. I can see if this either when it gets expunged, etc. This one may partner with the one regarding licensure.
Mhm.
You know, as you said, it may be expunged so that there's nothing to see when one does a examination. So that does help me a little bit. If that is what the board still wishes.
Let me no,
And of
Richard.
course, one thing I can do is, of course, update that it's no longer being considered if that is indeed the update.
Okay, I think Richard's nodding his head no. That's not, and Denise, I'm not gonna ignore you. We're gonna get right to your, unless just
I'd
wanna
take it
finish.
off. I'd take it off. That's all.
Oh, you take it off? Okay, Denise, any comments on this one, on 731?
No
No?
comments. I would
Okay.
defer to whatever Helen's recommending.
I do too, Helen. I would defer to you.
Oh, I'm not recommending anything. I would just like to know if the board can give me a more focused question. Otherwise, I will just generically provide an explanation if that's what the board would like.
Yeah, just
If
see
that
where-
explanation is this is no longer active. But I didn't understand what the board is looking for. So that does kind of give me some aid if the board even still would like a recommendation or an analysis.
Okay.
I would suggest if it's not dead yet, maybe we should just keep it for now.
Yeah, I agree, Helen, and maybe you can just come up with a, where it's at. We'll keep it on the watch list and see, how it's moving. I know we were concerned a little bit about that because the other law had passed. So I think that would be helpful if that helps you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then Denise and Bianca.
That's all. I
Okay.
just should keep it because it was a 2-year bill. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Bianca. Denise.
Regarding future items, I agree with the 2 items that Richard spoke about in terms of them being priority. I wasn't sure if I heard this. It may have already been stated, so pardon me on that. But because we have a public comment from OTAC and to be timely, I wonder and that's right above the request for cultural diversity. So if we look at the bottom 3 prior to the practice committee, those might be ones that I suggest have a higher priority because one's a public comment and two are public comments and one is a letter that came in also from OTAC. So that might be something to consider moving up. I also wonder if we go back up to number 1, if because of what we've already done in this agenda and what we've done in previous agendas, if we're at a point where we can either decide today that we've done what we need to do there and remove that, and also if we've identified going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going down to identify committee members' appointment criteria, have we also addressed that satisfactory to a point that can go off? Regarding the other priorities, thank you for asking, but I wouldn't have, I wouldn't, I would leave that up to you and the executive officer. The one thing that I do want to know is once we remove things, and I can wait till February to bring this forth, or to ask that it's on the list, but just to give you a highlight of what I'm thinking for future agenda items. I've been looking at some of the initiatives within the profession, given that we have 3 public members on our board and 3 professional members, and we're making decisions for the consumer based on our licensees. I started to look at some of the initiatives as it related to things that are happening nationally. So for example, and specifically related to quality, access, consumer care. And so, for example, there's a campaign that the American Occupational Therapy is participating in called Choose Wisely, and that's part of the Board of Internal Medicine. There's a whole group of all kinds of professions participating. It seems that it really has themes that are right up our alley that could really help us. All I'm wondering for future items is when we have a schedule or a board meeting that's lean, is it possible to have items on our agenda that help us as a board on what's happening nationally and trends and to suggest certain speakers from that. So where I would go is, as soon as we remove more things from this list, could we also be thinking about when there are leaner schedules and per the input, per the direction of the president and executive officer, can we please have things like this choose wisely where we request a speaker that can perhaps keep us or fill our time, so that since we are all coming together, it's quite valuable in terms of how we spend time and also educating each of us.
So I put your, I'll go through all the comments. I hope that you made to, I'm going to address your last one first. So I put it down here, just when we're looking at trends and forecasts, seeing if that's even a possibility for us to discuss, stuff that's happening outside that might be related to the board that we might want to consider. So I have that on here, Denise. The 3 bullets that you identified that could we remove? Yes, Richard had asked that question, and Heather said we also address those. So we could remove those from the agenda in terms of the per diem policy, the administrative manual, and the member appointment were removed because we have addressed those, or Heather will remind me if we didn't. And then the 3 bullets before the practice committee were the exact ones that Richard also brought up. His only caveat for the discussion on public comment alleging OTAC pushing credentialing was to time it. If the ledge was happening at the same time, it might be a good time to put it up. Otherwise, wait for legislation so we could have that conversation. But everything you highlighted is the same thing he highlighted as well.
Great. Can we get two quick follow-up questions, if I may? Can we make sure if following that direction, that makes sense on the direction with the legislation, can we make sure that there's from someone, either board staff or the president, that at least gives that explanation back to our public commenter so that they don't think we're taking 6 months to respond to them?
You mean like having this
We're
list?
gonna wait till the legislative session would be the response.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've received your comment. Thank you. We're going to wait till the legislative session.
got it.
And then the other thing that I might suggest, just from a organizational standpoint, because we have the practice committee down at the bottom and we have the disaster preparedness, maybe any of those appointments to the committee are all bullet points that are near each other. So we're addressing the, in an organized fashion, we're addressing what are, appointment committee issues as agenda items versus other things, like the way the public comments are all lumped together, that'd be helpful. 2 things. Do we know when our practice committee will be able to start? And 2, was there any comment on when we might have in-person meetings?
I know Deputy Director Carrie Holmes yesterday, when I asked her that question, Denise, because it was in terms of are we allowed to have hybrid models? So if I remember correctly, and if she's still on the call, it was January 22nd that we are to resume normal board meeting function, which means meeting in person. However, I understood it to be in change and flux because we don't, COVID is still not over and it's still evolving. So it was still, that's the plan, but it's of course, we're going to adapt to anything that's happening or coming up. And then I think I remember too, Deputy Director Holmes also said, they're willing to entertain discussions on hybrid models. If you meet one time and then you do for cost savings, reducing carbon footprint, those kinds of things were discussed, that they would be open to maybe having a hybrid, maybe having in person, maybe, teleconference. But from what I remember, January 22nd, it was around the time we were supposed to resume normal board meetings in person. So that was your first question. Oh, Denise, your second question was around, what was it? I'm so sorry.
Practice committee appointment.
Yeah.
There's been some delays, I guess, in that, and I'm wondering, are we farther along in those delays so that the practice committee can start to do planning for 2022?
Heather, I'm not aware that we're ready to go yet, are we? We're still waiting people, right?
No, yes, I would just remind the board members to reach out to colleagues and encourage them to submit an email with a resume or CV. If I recall, typically we used to have 7 members. That was to ensure a breadth of practice areas, urban, rural, et cetera, profit, nonprofit. And if I recall, as of right now, there are only 2, possibly 3 people that were appointed to the practice committee, and only one of them has advanced practice approval. And that's problematic given that there are items tasked to that committee to take a look at the ACODE guidelines compared to the requirements for that. And so I'm just, I just want to point that out. But
Well,
right now, there aren't enough people to even meet.
I would like to volunteer to be on the practice committee. I have 2 advanced practice certifications. So,
You do, Richard?
yeah. So I'd
Wow.
be happy to help. And also we have a couple of board member appointees. I think we have 3 board members on the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, which is great. I'm just wondering if you need to, if the
Jibby.
so somebody from outside to add a practitioner from outside. We've had a mix of both previously, and that season is coming up. So sooner rather than later, that if we're going to have any more, I think it's Lina and me and is it Beata?
Yes, I'm part of it.
That's current. I think that's our current board committee of 3. But if the president would appoint, could appoint more people, 3 is a good number to work with. But yeah.
Okay, and then Helen, I see your hand up. I'm going to go to you next. Heather, is there any way to get the stuff that we passed this week, in terms of the criteria for curriculum members, all cleaned up so that we can mail that out to our colleagues? And then, I know there's descriptions even further for like the practice committee. There's a little bit more stringent guidelines for that. Could we just get that, or flag us when we have it so that we could access the email or blast our colleagues again to reach out and see if someone might help get on the boards, if that's okay?
Yes, actually, my notes also have Jeff Farrow on that Legislative Affairs Committee, I believe. So
I was in the past, but I haven't gotten any contact lately, so maybe that's because we haven't been doing it. I'm happy to. You tell me what you need. If we need to reshuffle the deck, I'm happy to do it.
no, I'm sorry. I just went and Richard had mentioned Lina and Beata, but not you. So I'm just trying to make sure we're all, we have all the right information. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Helen, I didn't want to ignore you. I see your hand down now. It's probably a hand from before, but if I'm incorrect, let me know.
Yeah, my error. It was from before.
Okay, no worries. Jeff, Jeff's okay? Okay, any other discussion on future agenda items for up for discussion? If not, moderator, can we open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you so much, moderator. Appreciate that. Oh goodness, I need my coffee. Okay, that takes us to our last item. Thank you everybody for contributing today and just being here. Wow. Okay, election of 2021 officers. Guys, it's that. Oh, Heather, yes.
Right. Yes, I'm so sorry. So I did want to just go back to the ending under, and again, this will be fast, no action, but under item 19D, which is listed on page 3 of my report. There was not a handout about it, but it is listed in my report. I've reported that for board staff that have not shown proof of vaccination, they are subject to testing, and staff reports are that this process is both smooth, quick, and efficient. We also provided the legislative calendar highlights to assist with that, and to Richard's point about pretty soon legislation will be introduced, and the Legislative Affairs Committee will need to be meeting to evaluate or discuss the legislation and provide recommendations to the board on positions. And then finally, something that came out when I my apologies, I missed this bill, but when the workforce needs assessment was forwarded to me from the Centers for Excellence, she did point out that AB 927 did take that pilot program where a few years back, 16 community colleges were in a pilot program to establish bachelor degree programs. And the then director of Santa Ana College's OTA program did submit a proposal and was approved. And they were in that pilot program to have this bachelor's in science and occupational studies. And so that was a pilot program that's now been extended. And so that's one of the things that the primary researcher on the workforce needs assessment did ask about, have you reached out to the other community colleges to see if they will be doing that and what will that do to the pipeline, et cetera. So again, no board action. I just did want to reference those couple of items on page 3 of my report. And I'm sorry, thank you for your time. That concludes my report.
And Heather, so we'll have to be mindful if we do meet in person, right, for that February meeting, we'll have to be mindful of the vaccination status, see if we're still wearing masks, and all those will be prepped for, right, for maybe some either proof of vaccination or testing prior to the meeting, or all that has to be, there's going to be a system in place, correct?
There is a system in place currently, and if the board is anxious for that process to have an in-person meeting, we can start that process and identify location, contracts, et cetera, travel arrangements and also this testing. And obviously, there's other criteria about, a recent negative test. You can demonstrate that. That's all coordinated through the executive office. And so what we can, and it's, too early to do that now, but if you would like, we can make steps to have an in-person meeting in February and provide the criteria when it gets closer, subject, of course, to whatever, health officer requirements in effect, understanding that we may have to cancel that. And then we would, of course, have the WebEx option.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That sounds really good. I got the feeling that people were interested, but I don't want to assume for the board that maybe, so are you guys interested in having our first, if it's possible and it all plays out okay, having our first in-person meeting in February? Or what are your thoughts?
Yes, definitely. I would
Yes?
definitely be interested.
Yeah,
I'd be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under
Okay.
the current regulations, unless I'm interested too, and under the current regulations, unless they change, right, we would have to go. We did want to tell it if they didn't change, we would go back to the other format. We would have a 5 locations where public could come in, but they could be remote as long as they're open to the public. Is that that's the current how things are currently scheduled to revert?
We will see. I believe that there's going to be a provision about the meetings not having to provide the location. And there is, it's my understanding that
Something's in the works.
Something's in the works. Solid and OIS have both been working on this, and there have been issues with not only the bandwidth for the meetings when it's a hybrid of in-person and WebEx, but the technology is not syncing up so well, and their testing has resulted in a success only when the public portion of the meeting was at the DCA headquarters, so that their webcasting system could be integrated with the WebEx platform. And again, that would require, that's in Sacramento. And so that's actually not been successful with so far at other remote locations. So to the extent, I just don't think we're quite at hybrid. It does appear, and again, that could change between now and February, but it appears that, you either have an in-person meeting or you have a WebEx meeting. So, but what we will do, I hear everyone loud and clear, we will take steps to find a place to hold the February meeting in person. And we will work with exec when it gets just a little bit closer, make sure there aren't any new health orders, prohibiting this type of thing. And we'll go down that path, and I just ask everyone's understanding and flexibility. If something changes at the last minute, we may be going to WebEx and, scrapping those plans, so to speak. Thank you.
And there's just, Richard, I'm sorry. Did you have another thing to say?
Well, on a related note, we could finish with this, with that. just that normally in a normal year, when we get a new board member who's a public member, a practitioner who is near, conveniently located would invite that board member to come to an occupational therapy site to find out more about occupational therapy. And Lina is, I think you're nearby me. I think you're in the East Bay, and I'm in San Francisco, and we have never done that because of COVID. Because it
Right.
wasn't really something that I offered or was able to offer. And I just wanted to throw that out because if we're going to start doing in-person things again, maybe, I don't have your phone number. I have your email. I'll email you, but maybe we can get together and I can, maybe you already know all about occupational therapy and you've been to sites, but I'm happy to see if we can do something locally so that you can get a better idea. If you haven't had a chance, you may not have had a chance under the circumstances. So
Right. I would love that.
great.
I wasn't even aware, Richard. So thank you for enlightening the fact that, what a nice gesture too, to be able to help Lina.
Well, it's a very belated one, but it's not, I've been thinking about it a long time. So.
Yeah, thank you for that and
But
offering.
now I'm jealous. I didn't go to any sites.
Bianca, come on down. Let's have some tea, girl. Come on.
I pushed
Try
my
Lana,
way in.
try Lana.
I met Denise and Heather at her place of work, and I've been pushing Richard because I'm a Kaiser member, so I have a good reason to go visit Kaiser when I'm in town anyway. So
we had an unfortunate visit. We had an unfortunate visit to Kaiser, as I recall.
I did, yeah.
Thank you so much, Richard, and everybody contributing to that. And Heather, I didn't want it to go lost. I really enjoy WebEx for the fact that we just have so much participation, and it would have never happened that, somebody like a whole class of Samuel Merit students can drop by in real time and engage in learning moments. I think there's so much power to be said with that. So just want to plant that. I think the hybrid would be an amazing model, and I know I hear you loud and clear, it's in the works, but man, that was special, right? The participation, especially in our strategic plan, outreach is part of it. So I think that the WebEx allows for that. So I don't want to underestimate the power of that system.
Right. Well, and the nice thing is, we did make the shift a few years ago, rather than going to hotels for meetings, but going to the schools, right? And so if I recall, I think it was West Coast that had the largest group. One time they had several different cohorts and they had like 92 people there, right? So that has been the value of going to Samuel Merit and West Coast, CSU Dominguez Hills a couple of times. And so to the extent that we're fortunate that Samuel Merit students did join today, that value of the in-person, CSU Dominguez Hills has already reached out to get me on their schedule in February. They said via Zoom because they're still not sure about the in-person versus virtual. But to the extent that if we can perhaps reach out to University of St. Augustine again about, an in-person meeting there, they were willing to host a meeting, previously, but we'll look at a school so that they can not only invite a period of time for the students, but also it's a nice chance to have time available for the faculty also that want like a one-on-one that's not so student related. So we will definitely look into the in-person meeting, but also we will focus primarily on holding one at a school if at all possible.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting just because we'll have to mirror or marry COVID protocols because the schools have strict protocols as well, in addition to what the board's doing. So, okay. Jeff, I saw you pop in.
I have one last question for Heather. Sorry that Heather, since you have all the board members here and we've recently just filled out a doodle poll for the December meeting, has every single person filled out that doodle poll, and can we confirm a date right now while we're here?
We can't do that right now, but what I can do is do it on Monday.
Okay.
Or even this afternoon. I just can't do that right now.
Okay, no problem. Just as long as, because my schedule's fine.
Yes.
Thank
you. We do plan to send out the save the date, confirming the date and time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Denise. Jeff?
I was just going to say, we didn't mention Loma Linda. We've had meetings there too. So
Jeff, we have Loma Linda.
I do know that we had a bad experience with an arbitrator, but hey, let's just not invite that person.
And parking and everything is brutal here. I must say, I love, but it's hard accessibility wise. I understand that too. But thank you, Jeff. Any other board discussion? I should probably open it up just for the public one more time. We've talked about some stuff in between there. Moderator, is it okay we open it up to see if there's any public comment before we get to our last item?
Sure. This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Okay, everybody, last item, election of 2021 officers. It's that time to elect our officers going forward, so I'm going to open it up for board. We don't have closed session, but yes, I'm so sorry, I saw that. Any conversations, any elections? Where are we at with
This is for 2022, right?
Excuse me, yes, was that Lena?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, for 2022, Lena.
This is legal, if I may.
Yes, Helen.
Could we take a brief break before we begin this?
Sure. What, you need like 10, 15 minutes? What do you need?
That would be great.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We've been normally honoring 15 minutes because of board staff and the placement. So it's 11:31, let's 11:45. Moderator will show that we're coming back at 11:45.
Yes, I'll get an annotation up in just a moment.
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that, Helen. Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Hopefully everybody had a chance to take a little break. I'm so sorry, I was powering through. Secretary Marcos, do you mind taking roll just to make sure we have a quorum as we came back from break?
Yeah, of course. Richard Buchwalter,
Here.
Lena Doe,
Here.
Denise Miller,
Here.
Jeff Farrow,
Here.
Karen Pavlovich,
Here.
and Beata Morcos here.
We have a quorum. Thank you, everybody. Okay, last item on the agenda, election of the sorry, Lena, it should be election of 2022 officers, correct? Okay. Right, yes, that was the, unless I have that wrong, Heather, but the date's supposed to be 2022. So open it up to the floor. Any recommendations,
Well, this is Richard. I'd be honored to have Sharon Pavlovich represent the board before the joint committee when we do our sunset report next year. I'll support you and keep the same officers. And Beata's been doing a fantastic job as secretary, but if you could also be vice president, if Jeff is, I don't know what Jeff wants to be vice president. He's a fantastic vice president, but I'm not sure what.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Stay as secretary and still hoping that Jeff is going to be reappointed. However, yes, I would be.
Yeah, so I mean that's there's a couple things in the room, right? You know, obviously I'm the one that's now waiting to hear. We know that last year it took almost to the 11th hour before the state made their, reappointments to several people. I'm hopeful that I'll get reappointed. I don't know that there's anything in my record that would make the speaker not reappoint me. However, I do know that I haven't been, up until this past year, my attendance has been almost impeccable with, a few partial days missed. But I think with the nature of work that we've been doing, the lack of in-person meetings that have a reason I'm not available for work, I've had a few situations where I've had to conduct my regular business work during work time. And I do know, I know I'm not the only one, but technical issues have been a challenge. And I've been waiting on a new computer for quite some time because of the chip issues from import from China. But my computer is supposed to be at home at the end of the week. So
just get an Apple.
I would understand. Yeah, well, I don't know that that's my option, but it would not hurt my feelings if other people wanted to go with some other direction. But I do think it would be nice to have a year where I serve as vice president, where maybe we have in-person meetings and we are more present in person doing service, but it's up to the board. I'll accept a nomination if somebody nominates me, but if there's somebody that would rather do it and people think they'd be better, I'd support that too.
Look at you using the CBOT logo. I'm sure Jody's happy about that too, by the way.
That alone is a campaign tactic worth considering. Well, I would
I'm
nominate,
seconding Richard's nomination of keeping the current officers as it is.
That's Lena, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Lena. Denise, any comments? I want to make sure I'm looking at everybody. No comments? So we have, oh, and same, I just excited.
Denise is on mute. You're on mute, Denise.
No comments? I agree.
Okay. Thank you. It's exciting to move forward. It's all been
Let's take a
virtual.
vote.
Just to be able to move forward with everybody and traverse whatever this next year coming up is. Hopefully exciting though. Okay, there was a motion by Richard. There was a second by Lena to keep the officers as is. Any discussion? Any more discussion? If not, I'll open it up one more
I
time.
would say under Robert's rules, Sharon, you're going to want to ask 2 additional times if there's any other nominations. If
Under,
you find any other nominations, then you can close. Am I correct, Helen? She can close the nomination period, and since there's no nominations, it would be by acclamation. Are we allowed to do that in this format, Helen?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'll defer to Heather, who's done a lot more of these than I have.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to be honest. I do not remember that. So if you've most read that, then I don't have an opinion. I'm sorry about that.
okay, let's do.
I've been doing Robert's Rules of Election of Officers since 1986. Usually in election of officers, that's the process that's used. You open up nominations, you take nominations, you can have more than one individual nominated per position. If there's nominations for more than one position, more than one person per position, those nominations go to an election. If there are no additional nominations to an office that's open, then that board seat, that office is filled by acclamation. They used to use a very bad word. We won't use that word, but it's by acclamation. That's, usually how Robert's rules work. And I think we operate and function under that. But because it is, a state, I think it's a quasi Robert's rules kind of situation. I was kind of looking for, legal guidance. If we want to do it a different way, I'm fine with that too. But that's how we.
This is legal. I do believe even if there's only one person in a position, the board still needs to vote
Okay.
on that person. If that was the question, I perhaps I got confused, but I would concur with all but that one part. I think they still need to vote if no one on the board wants that person to serve in that particular position. That might be an issue. And so then there would have to be somebody else who volunteered. But yeah, so we'll just leave it there.
Okay.
I guess I just had a different question in mind. Okay.
All right, what we'll do is I'll open it up one more time for public comment before we call the vote.
All right, this is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you so much, moderator. Okay, Beata, there was a motion on the floor. There was a motion by Richard, a second by Lena Doe to keep the officers as is traversing into 2022. We're waiting to see also what happens with Jeff's appointment, and knowing that you are interested in VP should anything, evolve that way too. So I just want to mention that. But can we call the roll call for the motion?
Yes. Richard Bookwalter,
Yes.
Lena Doe,
Yes.
Denise Miller, Denise Miller.
Yes. Oh, I thought I was sorry. I thought I was on. Yes.
We can hear you now?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Yes.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes?
and Beata Morcos, yes.
Yeah, motion carries.
Yay! Congratulations.
Congratulations, everybody. This concludes, we do not have a closed session, our board meeting, but I just wanted to say thank you to board staff, to my colleagues on the board, for our participants, for legal, for our moderator, Sarah, just everybody on board that makes this happen. It is no small feat, and we are very mindful of that. Thank you for everybody's time. Looking forward to our next meeting in December. Everybody squeezes, hugs, sending all that out so that we have a wonderful weekend ahead, okay?